5% of the population suffer this disability. Translate that to the UK, and it's about 2 million people. Yet as far as our government's concerned, there are none. We set off for Stockholm and Swedish Sylvia's city centre flat. She's plotted a route to avoid all the masts. She wants to show us just how seriously her government takes her condition. Like the UK, this is a place where more and more people are acquiring Wi-Fi. But there's a key difference.
Okay, Sylvia. This is my living room. And today the painter has been here. And you see he has started painting black.
And this is anti-radiation paint?
Yes.
It's quite expensive.
It's very expensive.
Anti-radiation paint, paid for by the local authority. It shields her from neighbours' Wi-Fi and from nearby phone masts. So the Swedes have the same scientific evidence, but they recognise sufferers. In Swedish schools, even if there's only one person apparently affected by Wi-Fi, the system's removed and the classroom shielded. You'd think our government would base its decisions on the advice of their top man, the one it employed to protect our health, Sir William Stewart. But instead, it seems to have turned to others. First, the World Health Organization. It's robust in its language, saying there are no adverse health effects from low-level, long-term exposure. Is that an accurate reflection of the science, do you think?
I think they are wrong.
How are they wrong?
Because there is evidence. And the Stewart report pointed out some of that evidence.
So why do you think it is that the WHO, one of the most influential public health bodies in the world, continues to put out that message?
I think that they've got to review the statement that they're making.
But in your view, not an accurate reflection of the science that's out there?
I think it is not an accurate reflection.
Then there's this. It's unlikely you'll have heard of ICNIRP, but it's an international group of scientists which our government relies on to set our radiation limits. But here's the problem. It doesn't recognise any biological effects, so it bases our exposure limits on a thermal effect. In other words, the radiation has to be so strong it heats up your organs before it's restricted. That's why our safety limits are so high. How responsible do you think it is for governments to set limits for this form of radiation according only to a thermal effect?
Well, I think it's irresponsible to just set standard using a thermal standard. If you just set it based on the thermal effect, you're neglecting a large amount of data.
Most countries, including the UK, set their radiation limits according to the ICNIRP guidelines. They can't be wrong, can they?
Well, hopefully not, because, as you say, governments, and in that way, whole countries, the entire populations rely upon them, and I do hope that they deliver the right and correct message. However, I know also that they are heavily industry influenced, and I mean their basic message is that if you are below a certain thermal level, then it's all right. And
are they right to set their guidelines only according to thermal effects?
No. That's just rubbish, I would say. You know, you cannot put any emphasis on such guidelines.
So, why do we? I went to Rome to meet the man our government seems to favour over its own advisor, Sir William Stewart. He's a scientist who's responsible for the WHO's position and who founded the standard-setting body ICNIRP. He's a controversial character. Dr. Mike Repacholi no longer works for the WHO, but he's made decisions which affect all our lives. When you say on the WHO website there are no known adverse health effects, is that really giving people a complete picture of the science out there?
When that statement was put on the website, it was meaning that there was no health effects have been established. And when an effect has been established, it means it's been repeated in a number of laboratories using very good study techniques.
But Henry Lai will say that he's found them. Ole Johansson will say he's found them. I mean, there are a number of highly esteemed scientists who say they have found them well beneath those levels. Are they wrong?
If they've published, they are in the mix, because every review panel looks at all the studies, along with other studies, to see if they're comparable with those studies or point in the same direction. It's called a weight of evidence approach. And if that weight of evidence is not for there being an effect or not being an effect, that's the only way you can tell whether there's really an adverse health effect.
But here's the controversy. Dr. Repacholi used to work for the very industry which helps create this form of radiation. Before working for the WHO, he'd been an expert witness for the phone industry, defending their right to site masts in controversial locations.
Are you truly independent, do you think, as a scientist?
Well, I don't know how people perceive me. I perceive myself.
You know, I think you do know how people perceive you.
No, I do. I've seen the websites. And people can say what they like. I know what I am. I will only say what the science says. And that's, to me, that's an independent view. If people perceive it differently, so be it.
You didn't you, work for industry before the WHO and ICNIRP?
I did.
And you worked for them afterwards as well?
I did. And I challenge anyone to say that I've changed my mind because of my funder, because I sure as hell haven't.
So our government has a choice. Follow the recommendations of scientists like Dr. Repacholi and the WHO, who effectively say, roll it out and don't stop unless someone proves there's a risk. Or follow their own advisor, who says, hold on, don't rush ahead until we know for sure it's safe. Until that's resolved, is it our kids who've become the testbed?
Would you allow your children to sit in front of a Wi-Fi enabled computer day in, day out as they're going to school?
That's the tough question to answer. I don't think so. Yeah, I would limit the exposure to this type of radiation.
I would recommend to parents to tell the school to remove Wi-Fi, and otherwise I would change the school even.
Really? You take it that seriously?
Yes, very.
If you had kids who were at a school at the moment and there was Wi-Fi being rolled out, any concern at all?
None whatsoever. I'd make sure they had laptops and they could pick it up.
What do you think the government should do now when it comes to schools and Wi-Fi?
I think they should stop and say, we're going to do an inquiry into this. It will take a year or 2 years, then we'll come back to it. I don't think the nation will grind to a halt if we did that. I think it would convince a lot of people that the government takes health and safety very seriously with new technologies.
We asked the government for an interview about all this. It said no and referred us instead to the Health Protection Agency. The chairman of that is Sir...
Hang on a minute. It's Sir William Stewart.
The very man who's indicated to Panorama just how uncomfortable he feels about the speed with which Wi-Fi is being rolled out.
I believe that there is a need for a review of the Wi-Fi and other areas.
How important is it to do that swiftly?
I think it's timely for it to be done now.
If it's not?
Who knows?
Paul Kenyon there, and the UK has 3,000 wireless hotspots and 51,000 mobile phone masts, and more are appearing every week. Next week it's Married to the Mob, the Manchester woman convicted of helping to run her Sicilian husband's mafia empire.